Hello everyone! Today, we have just followed a deeply emotional story about the special journey of Ly Tu Anh and CEO Tung during one of the most important moments of their lives, welcoming their first child. From the painful and anxious moments when Tu Anh went into labor, to Tung's panic and constant prayers outside the emergency room, everything created a tense yet deeply loving journey. While Tu Anh was enduring intense labor pain, CEO Tung stayed by her side, rushed her to the hospital in time, and continuously encouraged her. Even while waiting in worry and uncertainty, he never lost faith that both mother and baby would be safe. And finally, the miracle arrived when the doctor announced both mother and baby are safe, bringing overwhelming happiness to him. In the end, when he held his child in his arms, CEO Tung truly felt the full meaning of family and love. It was a sacred moment that marked a beautiful new beginning full of happiness for both of them. If you enjoy emotional love and family stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next videos. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story. That day began like any ordinary day, but for Ly Tu Anh, it quickly turned into a life-changing moment she could never forget. In the morning, she had felt completely fine, going about her routine with a sense of calm and anticipation, as if she was simply waiting for the final days of her pregnancy to pass peacefully. However, everything changed suddenly in the afternoon when she began to feel an unusual discomfort in her lower abdomen. At first, it was mild, something she thought might pass after a short rest. But within minutes, the sensation grew stronger, sharper, and far more intense than anything she had ever experienced before. Tu Anh tried to remain calm, placing a hand on her stomach and taking slow breaths, hoping the pain would ease. Yet the contractions continued to build, coming in waves that left her struggling to stand upright. Her heart began to race as she realized this was no ordinary discomfort, it was the beginning of labor. A mixture of fear and urgency filled her mind, but she knew she could not face this moment alone. With trembling hands, she reached for her phone and immediately called CEO Tung, her voice breaking slightly as she tried to explain what was happening. On the other end of the line, Tung was initially startled, but the moment he heard the pain in her voice, his entire focus shifted. Without hesitation, he abandoned everything he was doing. Meetings, documents, and responsibilities no longer mattered. All that mattered was her and the baby. He rushed out of his office, his heart pounding with worry, and drove as fast as he safely could back to her side. When he arrived, he found Tu Anh leaning against the wall, her face pale and strained, struggling to breathe through the pain. Seeing her like that made his chest tighten with fear, but he forced himself to stay strong for her. Quickly, he supported her gently, guiding her into the car. Throughout the journey to the hospital, he kept one hand firmly on the steering wheel while the other held hers tightly, as if trying to transfer his strength into her. He spoke to her continuously, reassuring her that they were almost there, that she was not alone, and that both she and the baby would be safe. Tu Anh, though overwhelmed by pain, held on to his voice as an anchor. Every contraction made her grip his hand tighter, but his presence gave her a sense of comfort amid the chaos. The streets blurred past as they rushed toward the hospital, each second feeling heavier than the last. Inside the car, there was fear, urgency, and love all intertwined in a single moment that marked the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. When they arrived at the hospital, everything happened in a rush. Nurses immediately recognized the urgency in Ly Tu Anh's condition and quickly placed her on a stretcher, guiding her through the bright, fast-moving corridors. The sound of hurried footsteps, medical instructions, and beeping machines filled the air as she was rushed into the emergency room. Her face was pale, her breathing uneven, and every contraction seemed to drain more strength from her body. Yet, even in that moment of pain, she could still hear CEO Tung's voice beside her, refusing to let go of her hand until the very last second. As the doors of the emergency room closed, Tung was left standing alone in the hallway. The sudden silence felt heavier than anything he had ever experienced. The bright hospital lights contrasted sharply with the storm of emotions inside him. He stood there frozen for a moment, watching the closed doors as if willing them to open again. But reality settled in quickly. This was a moment he could not control, no matter how powerful or successful he was outside those walls. Slowly, he began to pace back and forth in the corridor. Each step reflected his anxiety, his uncertainty, and his deep concern for both Tu Anh and their unborn child. His usually composed demeanor was gone, replaced by raw emotion. He ran a hand through his hair, then clasped his hands together tightly, as though trying to hold himself together. The sound of distant medical equipment and muffled voices from inside the delivery room only made the waiting more unbearable. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. Minutes felt like hours. Every passing second heightened his worry. He stopped walking for a moment, leaned against the wall, and closed his eyes. In that silence, he silently prayed for their safety. He was not someone who easily showed vulnerability, but in that moment, nothing mattered more than the health of the woman he loved and the child they were about to welcome into the world. His thoughts were filled with memories of Tu Anh, her smile, her strength, and the journey they had shared leading up to this day. At one point, a nurse walked past, and Tung immediately lifted his head, searching for any sign, any update. But there was nothing yet. He nodded slightly, forcing himself to stay patient, though his heart was racing uncontrollably. His fists tightened again as he turned his gaze back to the door, silently willing everything to go well inside. The hallway felt cold despite the warmth of the hospital. The fluorescent lights above seemed too bright, too harsh for the emotions he was going through. Yet, amidst all the fear and tension, there was also hope, fragile but present. He kept telling himself that Tu Anh was strong, that she had come this far, and that soon everything would be okay. And so he waited, alone in the corridor, holding on to faith and love as the only things keeping him steady while life itself was being rewritten just beyond those closed doors. After what felt like an eternity of waiting, the atmosphere in the hospital corridor finally shifted. The heavy silence was broken by the sound of the emergency room doors opening. CEO Tung immediately straightened up, his heart pounding so loudly it felt like it might burst out of his chest. A doctor stepped out, still wearing a surgical mask, but his eyes carried a calm and reassuring expression. For a brief moment, everything around Tung seemed to stop. He couldn't breathe properly, couldn't think clearly, he only waited for the words that would determine everything. Then, the doctor spoke gently, "Both mother and baby are safe. It's a smooth delivery. Mother and child, both healthy." Those simple words landed on Tung like a wave of overwhelming relief. For a second, he froze, as if trying to process what he had just heard. And then, slowly, his tense shoulders relaxed, and his breath came out shakily. A deep emotion surged inside him, relief, gratitude, and joy all mixed together in a way he had never felt before. Without wasting another second, Tung thanked the doctor repeatedly and almost rushed toward the room as soon as he was allowed inside. His footsteps were quick but careful, as if afraid that the happiness he was feeling might disappear if he moved too fast. When he finally entered the room, he saw Ly Tu Anh lying on the bed, exhausted but smiling faintly. Her hair was damp, her face pale, yet her eyes shone with a peaceful warmth. The moment their eyes met, no words were needed. Everything they had gone through in the past hours was reflected in that single look. Beside her, a small crib was placed. And inside it lay their newborn baby, wrapped gently in a soft blanket. Tung slowly approached, almost afraid to touch such a fragile miracle. The nurse carefully placed the baby into his arms. The moment he held his child for the first time, something inside him completely changed. The tiny warmth of the baby's body, the delicate breathing, and the innocent face made his heart tremble with emotion. He looked down in disbelief, as if trying to convince himself that this was real. Tears welled up in his eyes, something rare for a man like him. He gently held the baby closer, his hands careful and steady despite the overwhelming emotions. In that moment, all his power, wealth, and responsibilities meant nothing compared to the life he was holding. He looked at Tu Anh again, and she smiled softly, exhausted but happy, seeing the joy in his eyes. Tung sat beside her, still holding their child, and carefully took her hand. The room felt warmer, filled with a quiet sense of peace and fulfillment. After all the worry, fear, and waiting, they were finally together as a complete family. He leaned slightly closer, his voice soft and filled with emotion as he whispered how grateful he was. In that hospital room, surrounded by soft light and silence, CEO Tung understood something deeply. True happiness was not in success or achievements, but in the small, precious life now resting safely in his arms and the woman who had given him everything.
Hello, xin chào tất cả các khán giả của kênh Ly Tu Anh Review. Vậy là câu chuyện của chúng ta ngày hôm nay đã kết thúc tại đây. Nội dung câu chuyện hôm nay của chúng ta thì đã kể về việc Ly Tu Anh đã đến ngày sinh nở và cô đã được CEO Tùng đưa đi bệnh viện cấp cứu kịp thời và sinh ra bé gái đầu lòng thật là bình an. Khoảnh khắc CEO Tùng bế con gái đầu lòng trên tay, anh cảm thấy rất là xúc động và hạnh phúc. Mọi tình tiết hấp dẫn về câu chuyện CEO Tùng và Ly Tu Anh sẽ còn được kể ở các video tiếp theo. Các bạn hãy đón xem. Các video sẽ được phát sóng hàng ngày trên kênh Ly Tu Anh Review nha. Cảm ơn các bạn rất nhiều.